right, all you glorious gamers out there. Welcome to the PlayersToo Podcast, the video game podcast for gamers like you, by gamers like you. You can find PlayersToo on all the social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com. That's PlayerStoo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, that really helps us out. It does a huge amount for the exposure of the show. And while you're over there, if you could leave us a little review as well, again, it just helps us out even more. And thank you so much to anyone that's already done that for us. You're an absolute legend to us. Alright, and on with the show. My name is Mark Henderson. With me, as always, Mr. Lewis Camley. How's it going, Lewis?
Going very well, Mark. Good to see you again, as always. Been a few weeks since we've laid eyes on each other, so always good to see you again.
It has, Lewis. I have to apologise to everyone that I was very ill last week and could not record. I simply could not record. So, yeah, my apologies. We missed one last week. I think that may be our first ever miss. You know that?
Yeah, like other than
intentional misses.
Yeah.
Other than intentional misses,
yeah.
That is our only miss.
Yeah, because even when we've had issues before, we've kind of delayed it a few days, but it seems like you were just in bed for a week.
I slept so much. But anyway, Lewis, as you didn't have to record a podcast this week, what have you been playing?
Yeah, Mark, I've had a little bit more gaming time, although, of course, never as much as you imagine you're going to get when you've effectively got a week off. But yeah, a couple of things to update you on, really. I have finally finished Blasphemous.
Nice.
Yeah, which I've obviously been talking about a fair bit over the last, month probably. I've wrapped it all up now. I've finished on something like 98 or 99% completion because, again, similarly to Hollow Knight, it's kind of one of these games where in order to do the final few fights, you're going to want to basically backtrack and get most of the upgrades and get all the kind of additional stuff, and also to get the true ending, you have to kind of go back and do a couple of essentially little challenge rooms. And yeah, I think everything I've said about the game stands for itself. It's not groundbreaking, but it's a really solid little Metroidvania if that's what you're looking for. If that is the kind of game that you're looking for, take a look at this game online. If the style, if the look of it appeals to you, I would say dive right in, because an interest in that art style I think is quite important, quite central to your enjoyment of the game. If you're not captured by how weird everything looks, I mean, it really is one of the strangest, most eye-catching games I've played in a long time. If that isn't doing anything for you, then there's plenty of other Metroidvanias that you could pick up that may be similarly satisfying, really, in terms of just a really unusual setting and some really fantastic enemy design and NPC design and world building. It's really nice. I can't kind of recommend it more on that scale. And then to follow up on that, Mark, I've been jumping around on a few different games. I've had that kind of voracious appetite to just keep trying different things. I don't know where to land. I've been playing games for a couple of hours each night, but not having a big lengthy session. And so the first thing that I went to, Mark, was Bloodborne.
Yes, this is the correct answer to all those questions, Liz, is play Bloodborne. That is the correct answer.
Yeah, I booted it up one night. Me and my flatmate decided to have a look at it and to try and get over that initial fear factor by just going in, not looking at any guides, not looking, for strategies and stuff. Just decided to jump in and see what it felt like. The first few hours of the game, the only section I've ever played before, because you and I played it together years and years ago.
Yeah.
Pretty much shortly after the game came out, I think. So yeah, I've played it for a couple of hours just, and I may well start again, but my progress feels decent, I've got to say.
Nice.
Yeah, I found the combat much simpler than I was expecting to. There's a learning curve there, absolutely, but I wasn't getting wailed on immediately. And I was feeling my way into it. Like, I can tell how good it's going to get. As I say, I've played this bit before, so I know it's difficult and I know it's deliberately punishing at the start typically for Souls games, to get you on that path, to get you playing the right way. So I'm going to come back to it in a more solid way when I've got slightly more time, because I do think, as we spoke about at length with Hollow Knight as well, that it is a game that rewards being able to sit and play it for 7 hours straight.
Oh, it certainly does.
Yeah.
It definitely does. It's not a game to be played in 22-hour sittings or something.
Exactly. Yeah, I felt that the little bit of time I gave to it, I made very little progress, and to come back to it the next night and possibly make no more progress as well, I thought that's what's going to put me off. So I've jumped away from it for now, but that's not to say that I won't necessarily be playing it this weekend even. I've not ditched it. if you know what I mean. And so finally, the last thing that I just started playing last night, and it came as a result of a little flurry of interesting games that just came to Game Pass on PC, which I downloaded all in one fell swoop. So I downloaded Supraland, which is a little puzzler that I've been looking at for a little while, Empire of Sin, which you and I have obviously spoken about a fair bit, and I'm really excited for that. But I also downloaded Genesis Noir, which is a new jazz-infused adventure point-and-click type thing.
I literally know this as the jazz game.
Yeah, exactly. It's got a jazz soundtrack, but it's also got a really jazz-like approach to structure and storytelling. It's very unclear what the hell is going on. It's very much a big metaphor about both the Big Bang and the creation of life in this universe, and also a noir plot line of a man trying to save his club singer romance from being shot by someone. That is kind of as much as I can lay my hands on, because it is very strange. It's mostly point and click. It's mostly just about getting this really weird, it's hard to even call it a narrative, just this mood across to you. But it does also have some pretty minimal puzzles and stuff like that. So there are reasons to be clicking your button, you know. It's not just a straight up walking sim. Really enjoying it, really stylish. I think I've played about a half to 2/3 of it. I think it's only like 4 hours long, so I'll probably be able to tell you more next week. But really enjoying it so far. A strange little game, but quite an exciting one.
Nice one, man. That sounds really cool. I must admit, when I saw Genesis Noir, when I saw various trailers for Genesis Noir on showcases over the past few years, I must admit, it done very little for me. But I know that you were like, no, I've grasped onto this for whatever reason. So I'm really glad you're liking it, man. I really am.
Yeah, and it's just the joy of Game Pass that it was there to try for effectively free.
100%, you know? Yeah. That's the power of Games Pass, right? It's all at your fingertips.
Exactly. And what about you? What have you been playing while you've been off?
Well, Lewis, I took the time off to play... Well, I never took the time off to play these games. I took the time off because I was ill and happened to play these games. And I started the BioShock series, which is one of these big, huge, totemic video game series over the past, 5 to 10 years, I guess. In fact, maybe longer ago than 15, that now, Jesus. Yeah. That I just missed completely. I just missed it entirely. I must admit, these games hold up absolutely brilliantly. It is incredibly refreshing to play a first-person shooter with no ulterior motive. It is just a narrative story. There's no fucking microtransactions. There's no in-game purchases. There's no bolt-on multiplayer mode. It's just an out-and-out story. And it's just nice. It's just nice not to have to worry about that. When games were simpler, Liz.
Yeah, absolutely.
But wow, the first one really got its hooks into me. Like, it really did. It has way more like horror elements to it than I thought the game would have. Particularly the first one, actually. But I've also completed the second one as well, and both of these feel like two sides of the same coin, you know what I mean? The second one is just almost a direct continuation in tone and everything, and what the game does incredibly well is sets like an incredible mood and atmosphere and just this vibe about it, and its aesthetic is so good, ridiculously good. I am shocked at how much I like these games, Liz. However, I started playing the Minerva's Den DLC for the second game last night. Mm-hmm. The game crashed, which was the second time that the second game had crashed on me. It also crashed in the middle of it. This game seems to be extremely bad at autosaving and relies on you to save, which is just, as a modern man, Lewis, as a modern gamer, that is just something I don't even fucking think about. So I was playing Minerva's Den, and to my horror, I think I was about 3 or 4 hours into it, and it's not that long, right? It's not that much longer than that. I wouldn't say. I was probably halfway to 2/3 of the way through it, and I lost all the progress because it had not saved at all. That was at about 1 a.m. last night, and I was just like, oh, well, fuck this. Yeah. Like, I'm absolutely done with this. But the thing was, is that I was really enjoying that as well, but I'm not sure if I'm going to go back to it, to be honest with you. I was just so disheartened. And I really want to play Infinite now. I really want to go and play BioShock Infinite, which I know takes a bit of a different route, basically, from the first 2 games, but it's still something that I really want to play, man. I'm shocked at how much I'm enjoying it. I really am. I know that some people think that this is among the best games ever made, so I really shouldn't be so shocked that I enjoy it this much. But man, it is fantastic, and they all hold up. If anyone wants to go back and play the BioShock series, do. It 100% holds up. It absolutely does. Yeah,
like, I'm really glad that you're saying that, because that has been on my list to go back to as well. And yeah, I've had the BioShock collection. Are you playing on PlayStation? Yeah, it was a PS
Plus.
Yeah,
playing on PlayStation. Yeah, but there's a weird thing happening with installs as well. Infinite installs differently but for me it wasn't showing up on PS5, so I had to launch Infinite from the store, not my library. It was bizarre, Lewis. It's absolutely bizarre, but it does work. I do have Bioshock 1 and 2 and Infinite in the collection, and that was given away on PS Plus last year or something.
Yeah, like a year or something, I feel like, So I've been meaning to go back to it as well. Infinite is the only one that I have played. I think I played about half of that game before. That was the last game I played on PS3 before I got a PS4, so I just fell away from it basically. But I really like what I played of that. It definitely got issues, well documented issues around its story and stuff like that. But in terms of gameplay and in terms of that kind of mood in that world, I thought it was really fun, and I would love to go back and play those older ones. So the fact that you're saying, and I think that you can be fairly critical of an old game if it feels old. I remember how you felt about Uncharted. So if you're saying
Uncharted does not hold up so well,
exactly,
we'll tell you that
but
right
if you're
now.
saying that this does, then that's a really good sign, I think.
No, this really does, man, and I am blown away with how much I'm enjoying it. To be honest with you, I'm now like, oh my god, when is Ken Levine making another game? Because these are amazing. Anyway, Lewis, enough of that. Time for the news. Alright, news item number 1. It has been confirmed, Lewis, that the PS3, PSP and Vita stores will be closed for good this year. This rumour actually leaked earlier in the week as reported by The Gamer. However, it has subsequently been confirmed by PlayStation that the PS3 and PSP stores will close on July the 1st and the Vita store will close on August the 27th. After this date, you will no longer be able to buy games online. That includes any sort of DLC or in-game purchases as well. Wallet funds from gift cards will also have to be spent by that date on those systems. Otherwise, your wallet funds will be usable on the PS4 and PS5 stores. However, PlayStation have confirmed that any game you previously purchased on these systems will be available for download even though the stores are closed. So, Lewis, obviously, this is sad. This is a sad thing to hear, but unfortunately, these things can't and won't be supported forever. That is just the nature of things, unfortunately. Despite some mild online outrage, this is going to affect a vanishingly small community of gamers in reality. I think the biggest one here might actually be the Vita, which saw a bit of a resurgence in more recent years, but I'm not really sure how many people are relying on the PSP, for example, in terms of their online games, or even the PS3 now, So this does suck, and it definitely does suck for people who are still relying on those consoles for whatever reason. They've just chosen not to upgrade. Maybe they're super casual gamers and every now and again pick an odd game from the store to play on their old PS3 or whatever, so it does suck for people like that, and I genuinely am sad about this. But I think the most sad thing about this is actually from like a video game preservation point of view, because presumably when these libraries of games are gone, there will be games on that are just lost to history now. They're just gone forever, and this for me actually is a reason why backwards compatibility is more important than just a nice consumer friendly feature. If PlayStation gave these studios an easy way to move their game from the PlayStation 3 store to the PlayStation 5 store, not have to change any of their code or anything like that, not have to do any more work to the game, because even some of those studios might not even exist anymore, do you know what I mean? Just an easy way to move it onto the new system, but the PS5 is not backwards compatible with the PS3, so those games are unplayable on current consoles. I just think it's sad that these games will just be forgotten and just lost to history,
Yeah, I think that is the main takeaway from it as well, to be honest. As you say, it's sad that the stores are gone and that there will be some gamers, presumably, who are still using those systems or are still playing on PS3, like you say, because they've just not bothered to upgrade, and that's still legitimate. There's no reason to think that it's not. But
of course.
But there comes a point where it's not financially viable for Sony to continue to support a server. So in that sense, it's kind of inevitable. But who is losing out? Yeah, it's gamers who want to preserve the games that they have or to access these older games. It's collectors. It's other devs. I think that's the thing to bear in mind, is that people learn about games from playing other games, and there'll be lessons that are just lost. I think it's also important to kind of acknowledge that PS3 in particular was kind of the first fully online console, or, that generation was.
Yeah, the 360 and the PS3 were the first consoles that were very focused on being an online machine.
Yeah, and that you could get downloadable games for. Like, I don't think before that was super common.
No. Well, not outside of the PC world.
Yeah.
No, I mean, on consoles, this was the first time. This is when broadband was widely available to people. You know what I mean? That was the first console that took advantage of that, and it was the first time you got digital-only games on console. Again, I mean, on PC, obviously, that has existed for a long time, but on console, that was the first time. So, yeah, there will just be games that are just gone now, unfortunately, and that's sad.
Yeah, it's kind of the first time that's happening, where like things will be fully lost because there's nothing hosting them anymore. There's no place for them, and I guess this particularly pertains to PlayStation exclusives from those consoles as well, because some other games, they'll be available on other systems and things like that. But yeah, it's not great, and Sony really should do better in terms of their backwards compatibility offering, as difficult as that may be. One solution might be that all of these games end up dumped on PS Now, but there's still issues there around, you've already bought them, you already own them, or, you would have bought them, but you can't now, all of that stuff. So there's no perfect
even
solution.
like that, they can't dump every game from the PS3 and PSP and Vita store, you know what I mean?
No.
So there is going to be something in there that's just completely gone. I mean, I'm sure the bigger games are already available, but I'm sure that there is hidden gems in there that are just going to be gone forever now, and that's going to be that, sadly. It's just quite sad. I always think as well when you hear about, that's the PS3 stopped being mass produced now, like the last PS3s have rolled off the production line. I always think that's quite sad as well, you know what I mean? But to be honest with you, this is even sadder. Alright, Lewis, news item number 2. Microsoft are apparently in talks to purchase Discord for $10 billion. $10 billion with a B, Lewis. Holy shit. VentureBeat reported last week that Discord were looking at the possibility of selling the company. However, it has been confirmed that Microsoft were the people that they are in talks with to purchase the company. Apparently, there had also been discussions in the past with Amazon and Epic Games. Microsoft have in recent years tried to purchase TikTok and Pinterest, and Bloomberg have said that Microsoft, quote, has been shopping for assets that would provide access to thriving communities of users. Discord themselves have started to evolve from a solely gamer-focused app to more of a, quotes, place to talk, and have updated and have added a lot of community tools over the past few years to sort of take them in that direction. However, I still think that Discord definitely maintains that core DNA of being gamer-focused, you know what I mean? Although it might not be solely for gamers anymore, they're still definitely a gamer-focused app, you know? Discord currently has over 100 million monthly users, which is just a staggering amount of people, huge amount of people. And with the pandemic hitting as well and forcing everyone indoors, we can't speak to one another in rooms anymore. The demand for services like Discord is just at an all-time high as well. However, Bloomberg have also said that people familiar with the matter said that a deal wasn't necessarily imminent, and one person even said that Discord were likely to go public, or more likely to go public than they were to sell. And Bloomberg's Matthew Canterman has said that Microsoft buying Discord has made a lot of sense, and that he sees a good opportunity for Discord's Nitro and Games Pass to merge effectively, or for Nitro to become part of Games Pass, I suppose. And Nitro is just Discord's premium service, basically, because it's all about Games Pass lists. He also said that he expects Xbox to remain acquisitive, which totally just sounds like a made-up word, Lewis. I don't even know if it is a real word. Meaning that even if they don't end up buying Discord, he would expect Xbox to continue buying studios or whatever to bolster the value of Games Pass. Obviously, Lewis, paying $10 billion for a service like this, I'm sure that Microsoft have bigger plans for this app beyond Xbox. Although, again, I'm not really sure how this works with MS Teams. I know MS Teams is more sort of professional and job-focused, I would say. And as you were saying to me when we were discussing this off camera, like, Discord's obviously a lot more casual and hanging out with your friends. But to me, that they are sort of competitors, so I don't really know how that works. And Microsoft have not long rolled out Teams as well. Very bizarre situation if that does go through. However, Liz, from a gaming perspective, I don't think that it can be understated how big a deal that would be for a huge community of gamers who primarily play online, who like to use Discord, who like to chat with their friends, to have an integrated Discord service on Xbox, which I'm sure would come very quickly if this purchase did go through. I think this would be huge, like I really do. And I think the fact that Microsoft are willing to spend $10 billion on Discord tells you how big a deal they think it is, you know?
It's hard to understate that. I mean, this is more money than the Bethesda deal that you're describing here. So,
it's a lot more money. Not just a little bit more money, a lot more money.
So it's evident that they think that, you know, it's going to offer Microsoft as a whole, not just the Xbox part, but the whole company, a value even greater than adding, you know, the enormous back catalogue and studios of Bethesda. Yeah, no doubt about it. This is a big deal. Whether it will actually happen is another thing. And I think that there's a few reasons for that. Not that I have any insight at all into tech business in this way, but as you were pointing out, there's kind of already similar apps within the Microsoft portfolio. You know, would it shut out other systems? Would it be harder to use Discord on Apple or in conjunction with PlayStation or something like that? You know, would the communities change in such a way that it wouldn't be in Discord's best interest to go private in that way? I don't know, I'm just positing that stuff. So, you know, there's surely a lot of back and forth to be done around this. But yeah, if it were to go through and, as you say, inevitably Xbox integration would happen quickly, that is pretty major. I mean, that just builds in an entire communication app into your Xbox, which is exactly what Phil Spencer will want to happen.
Yeah. Again, we were talking a little bit about this just before we started recording, and I'm not sure how much Phil Spencer would necessarily have been involved in this deal, because spending $10 billion on an app like this, I think that might have come from higher up the tree at Microsoft than Xbox even exists on. You know what I mean? Like, this is a major acquisition. I know $7.5 billion was also a major acquisition, but that also shocked everyone. Do you know what I mean? $10 billion is an absolutely colossal amount of money, and I reckon that this is a purchase that goes way beyond gaming for Microsoft. Do you know what I mean? However, I'm sure Phil Spencer was doing fucking cartwheels when he heard that this was on the table to be purchased, because to add that to Games Pass, man, that would be something. Or just to have that in the Xbox ecosystem, you know what I mean? I mean, you can't really use it in conjunction with PlayStation, or not in an integrated way on the PlayStation, so far as I'm aware anyway. And PlayStation's in-house communications in terms of like their communities and stuff like that, and in terms of like party chats and whatever, is just not very good. I mean, I think it's better now, specifically on the PlayStation 5. I think that they went to a bit of effort to try and improve that, but in the PlayStation 4 was absolutely fucking dog shit. Xbox have always been ahead in that sort of communications, and I just think that this would just take them so far beyond PlayStation, it would be ridiculous. Alright, Lewis, news item number 3. We have yet more Switch Pro rumours. This time regarding the internals, or the meat and potatoes of the system, as I like to call them, Lewis. According to Bloomberg, again, the upgraded NVIDIA chipset will bring an upgraded CPU and an increase in internal storage, which is very, very good to hear. Thumbs up from Mark. But it will also support NVIDIA's Deep Learning Super Sampling technology, or DLSS, which uses artificial intelligence to deliver high-fidelity graphics more effectively, which will allow the console to produce 4K images when docked. Now, Lewis, I am not going to pretend even remotely to have a single fucking clue about how DLSS works. However, I have seen PCs with graphics cards that support DLSS, and to say that it is impressive would be a bit of an understatement. It is very, very impressive technology, or I think it is anyway. However, existing games will have to update their code basically to support DLSS, and it seems like the technology will be primarily for upcoming games and not pre-existing games, so I presume that means that they wouldn't be able to be at 4K, or wouldn't be able to be as good 4K, if that makes sense. Wouldn't be, the upscaling wouldn't be as good, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Although I think it is very possible that Nintendo and other devs would update their games to support DLSS if it is going to look a lot better on a new Switch Pro system. And once again, Matthew Canterman has said that he expects the Switch Pro to be about $400, which means that the OG Switch would be $300, $100 less, and then the Switch Lite is then $100 less than that at $200. So, Lewis, first and foremost, the hardware stuff. Is it doing it for you?
I feel like just every week until this thing actually arrives, we're going to...
Do you want one yet?
Pull like some new bit of info and go, has this done it? I mean, yeah, that all sounds great. Like, that really impressive tech that can make games look even better and take full advantage of the both sides of the Switch. Great. That is exactly what they should be looking to achieve if they're bringing out a new system. Absolutely. As you say, if there's a way that older games can benefit from this as well, even if it is just a handful, if it's a selection of Nintendo exclusives.
Yeah, I'm thinking Odyssey, Breath of the Wild, you know what I mean? The big hitters,
exactly.
That's what I'm thinking about here,
Yeah, try and at least cover those to make them look better on a new system, because that will also help sell the new system when it comes.
Oh, totally.
That is all absolutely brilliant, yeah. Still, to me, that stuff isn't enough. Like, to get my existing copy of Breath of the Wild to look a little bit better is not going to make me pay, what did you say, $400? So £350 maybe?
Well, Nintendo seem to do a dollars equals pounds thing in their analysis, so in actual fact it could be 400 quid.
Maybe we're just in denial about the state of the British economy, Mark.
Well, I'm not. I think a lot of other people, probably not the podcast for this list.
But yeah, like for that kind of money, I need a bit more than just things looking really spectacular. Now, obviously, if it means that playing the new Breath of the Wild or some future Nintendo games, you know, playing them on the Switch Pro is either the only way or comfortably better. You know, if it's a case of Breath of the Wild 2 will run terribly on the original Switch and it will run like a dream on this new thing, then yeah, I probably will upgrade. I'll probably will upgrade at some point anyway. I'm just I'm just belligerent.
I know you
about
fucking
it.
will.
I don't like to be made to spend money on something that doesn't feel like a new thing. The PS4 to PS5 transition was similar, and I've seen that it was beneficial to do so anyway. So there you go.
Yeah. Obviously, we don't know anything more about the CPU or what's happening with the memory and things like that as well. Like, we don't know that much about what's happening with the internals of the system yet. We don't know how much it is going to improve, but like we were saying with the OLED screen a couple of weeks ago when that all came out, this, again, particularly the DDLS stuff, I think that is indicative of good decisions again.
Yeah.
So this is two pieces of information that we have about the Switch Pro that is saying to me, yes, Nintendo are making good decisions here, and I am all for it.
It's about time they did.
Yeah, I know, right? On the subject of the price, do you think that is too much, basically, for most people?
That is a good question. Hard to say. It's not an unsubstantial amount of money, and it's obviously...
It's more expensive than a Series S.
Yep, and it's more expensive than the discless PS5, right? Which is not a reduced console in any sense at all. So in that regard, it might well be too much money for some people, because even with these upgraded specs, I can't imagine it's really going to be pushing the PS5's capabilities. But at the same time, if people want those visuals, if they care about Nintendo, which obviously a lot of people do, you pay a Nintendo Premium anyway. There's no doubt about it. Nintendo make you pay more than you often have to for other systems. So I think it will be a big ask for people, but there will absolutely be a diehard crowd who will snap this thing up, no matter what the price is, really, as long as it's not comically over the top.
Yeah, I mean, I basically agree. I mean, in reality, these quote-unquote pro consoles, you know what I mean, like the PS4 Pro or the Xbox One X and whatever, like these are for hardcore gamers that care about that stuff, do you know what I mean? And the Switch Pro will be no different, you know what I mean? It's definitely aiming for the people that want the best of the best, do you know what I mean? But I think that if it were even $50 cheaper, I think that would go a long way, basically. All right, news item number 4. CDPR have released their long-awaited Cyberpunk 2077 patch 1.2 loose. This was the patch that was supposed to come out in February but got delayed because of the cyber attack on CDPR. The patch is absolutely fucking huge. It is 30 gig on PC and up to 45 gig on consoles. There is also a massive set of patch notes that come along with this, with literally hundreds of fixes on it, which is just ludicrously long. It's just hilariously long. Have you seen this, Liz?
Yeah, I saw a picture of it on Twitter earlier, and it was like next to a normal sized graphic, and then this thing which had to be so zoomed out in order to fit it all in. It was completely laughable. Yeah,
it is colossal. There have been changes to NPCs, to the in-game police vehicle steering. There was a lot of T-pose issues that apparently have been taken down. Honestly, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. But let's not forget, this is a game that came out in December last year and is still not available on the PlayStation Store, because when it came out it was so unbelievably broken, and now we're only getting it to a reasonably playable state, it seems, which is just awful, really. It really is. And I have just read a Polygon article published only a few hours ago as we record this, showing that the game is still buggy as fuck, Lewis. It still absolutely is incredibly buggy, despite the patch. So even with patch 1.2, do you think that this is just too little, too late for Cyberpunk?
It's really hard to answer that because it still feels to me, Mark, that there is an audience out there. People want that game and they want to support CD Projekt Red. But yeah, I think for a lot of people, partly that there's so much toxicity around it, but there's just also all the momentum's gone, you know?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, like there's an audience out there for it, and I'm sure there is an audience out there for it, but I don't feel as if anyone's clamouring for this anymore. If a game was removed from the PS Store that was very, very popular, I'm sure that they'd be getting inundated with, oh, you need to bring this back and whatever, blah, 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 blah. And I just don't think any of that's happening. Like, I don't really feel as though there's a huge push from gamers to get this game back. Like, I think everyone's sort of moved on.
I think you're broadly right about that. That's kind of what I mean when I say the momentum's gone. You know, all of that pressure and build towards the initial release date when it was the most talked about and probably the most anticipated game of last year.
Lewis, this might have been the most anticipated game of my living memory.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything like that before. It was insane.
Certainly, yeah, one of the most anticipated games of the last decade, no doubt about it. Talked about constantly. Constantly winning awards at, E3 and other big game shows like that of, best trailer, best demo, blah, blah, blah. So there was a huge expectation for it. And you're right, like there isn't that big clamour for it. But I think also if it had been removed from the PlayStation Store for reasons that were not to do with the state that the game was in from the developer's side, then there may well be more of a clamour for it. But the clamour really has to go to CDPR, and it's for people saying, please fix this. And I think that, yeah, by and large, a lot of people have just kind of moved on, forgotten about it, had their laugh about it. The thing that I think that could happen, though, is, and it almost depends on CDPR going a bit quiet for a while and just slowly and quietly tidying the game up, is that if they can do a proper relaunch at some point, ideally around its launch on the Series X and the PS5, when they've got proper versions ready to be put on sale, you can kind of start again at that point, I think, and put out a workable game and recapture some of it. But yeah, by and large, that moment has passed, and they will remain a byword for over-promising and for under-delivering for quite some time, I suspect. I noticed today CDPR, I think in a board call, they're sort of talking about a change in their strategy and moving towards developing 2 or more AAA games at once instead of doing these huge long marketing cycles. Like that was specifically referenced. So they understand that they've messed this up. They understand that things have got to change. We'll see if that does happen,
Do you think the game that we were promised ever actually existed? Like, do you think that game actually got off of a whiteboard somewhere? I suppose what I'm really asking you here is, how much do you think they lied about this?
That's the $1 million question, isn't it? Because, they've had accusations levelled at them that their demos and their trailers were fakes, and it's such a complex issue because we know that demos they're not a perfect vertical slice by and large. They are often created for those moments. But when does it become okay for a studio to put out a custom-made demo with all of their intended mechanics and systems at play represented there, but they haven't even started building them, they haven't tested it, they don't know if it works? That's kind of the problem with this marketing cycle, particularly that Cyberpunk found itself in, but that plenty of other games have done. You start talking too early about what you want to do with a game, and then you find that you cannot possibly deliver it. What do? Do you come out and admit that, or do you just try and sneak it past? So anyway, in answer to your question, I don't think the exact game that we all imagined we were getting has ever really been on a system anywhere. I don't think there's a version of that lurking on a hard drive that plays exactly as we were kind of led to believe it would. I don't think we'll ever get there.
No, I don't think we will, and I'm not sure that game ever existed either, Lewis. But Lewis, I might surprise you here. I actually bought a physical copy of Cyberpunk 2077 today.
Did you really?
Yeah, I really did. And do you know why I done that, Lewis? One, I think it's basically morbid curiosity at this point. I think I just have to play it. I also think that it's a bit unfair that we have been, quite frankly, bitching about it since it came out and neither of us have played it, so I am going to play it. But also, too, it is currently, right now, Cyberpunk 2077, what was supposed to be one of the greatest games ever, which turned into one of the greatest flops ever, is currently less than £30 on base.com in the UK.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it was 28 quid. And if anyone in the UK wants to go and buy Cyberpunk, it's at base.com for very cheap right now. Just an incredible fall from grace, Lewis. I don't really know what to say about it beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be really intrigued to know what you think of it when you play it. That's quite an exciting experiment you've set up there.
Me too. I'm quite excited about it as well, actually, oddly, but we'll see. We'll see how we go on. All right, Lewis, finishing off as we always do with a couple of shout-outs. Shout-out number 1. Monster Hunter Rise has come out this week, Lewis, and it has been very well received indeed. It's currently sitting at an 87 on Metacritic. It seems as though it's actually a bit more of a stripped-back version of the Monster Hunter from Monster Hunter World, basically. I'm not entirely sure that I realised that, like, in terms of its mechanics and whatever, but people seem to be absolutely loving it, and it seems to be performing pretty well on the Switch as well, which I know was a bit of a question mark when the game was first coming out. It was a bit like, oh, how's this going to actually perform on the Switch, you know what I mean? But yeah, everybody seems to be very, very pleased with it.
Yeah, I mean, Monster Hunter has got such a fan base around it. It does feel like a game to be quite difficult to get into if you've not played it before. Maybe anyone who's playing Rise, if they feel otherwise, could tell us. That would be interesting, because it's a series that's always pricked at my curiosity, but I've just never bothered diving in. So maybe this could be the one, because people are loving it, as you say.
Yeah, absolutely. I must admit, it's never really done anything for me. I know that you've been sort of vaguely interested in it since World. Not my jam, but for anyone out there enjoying it, I'm happy for you. Much more my jam, Lewis. Shout out number 2. It Takes Two has come out this week as well. There was a lot of twos in there. It Takes Two has come out this week. This is the co-op focus game from Hazelight Studios and Joseph Fares. It is currently sitting at an 89 on PC, Xbox and PlayStation. The game is getting a lot of praise for its art direction and its mechanics, but apart from anything else, it looks like absolutely great fun to me. It really, really, really does. I'm super glad that it scored really highly. I think Joseph Fares is an absolute madman, but in a sort of lovable way. And I really want to play this game with you at some point, basically, Liz.
Yeah, me too. I'm really excited about it, even more so because of the reviews and the feedback it's been getting. It seems to be just universally adored at the moment. So, yeah, whether online because of lockdown or maybe soon enough, hopefully, we could get together and play that. As you were kind of saying about Cyberpunk, like, we talk about playing co-op games so much that we couldn't possibly not play this at some point.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And just a sort of shout out 2.5 here, I guess. Also coming out this week, actually today as we're recording this, is Disco Elysium The Final Cut. There are no reviews out for this yet as we're recording it. Somewhat unbelievably, it is also launching with 20% off on the PlayStation Store, which is just absolutely bizarre to me. To the point that it makes me think that when the Xbox version of this game comes out later on in the year or in the summer, it'll be launching straight to Games Pass.
Yeah, I think that seems pretty likely. But yeah, and it's a discount for PS Plus members, so if you've got any interest in playing it, it's absolutely an astonishing game. I cannot wait for you to play it, Mark. One of my favourite games that I played last year.
Alright, shout out number 3. We missed it last week because I was ill. Apologies again, or we would have probably done a bigger thing on this. But I just wanted to shout out the Square Enix Presents showcase from a couple of weeks ago now. And the main announcements from this were Project Athia, which we now know is called Forspoken, and the announcement of Life is Strange True Colours. First of all, Lewis, very quickly, thoughts on Forspoken. Go.
Stupid name, but
yep, real bad. Athia was much better.
I mean, not a lot better, but yeah, neither are great. But the game looks quite fun. Looks like a bit of a fish out of water, a normal world person in some sort of dragon world, or vice versa. So intrigued to know more. I mean, we didn't get a lot of it.
I must admit, from the short gameplay that we saw, I thought it looked amazing.
Yeah,
I actually thought it looked really, really good.
It looks visually
I thought
incredible,
the movement, visually stunning as well. But I thought the movement in the game was amazing and incredibly fast paced and awesome, and the combat looked along the same sort of lines as well. Yeah, I am increasingly getting excited for that, to be honest. And Lewis, thoughts on Life is Strange True Colours?
To be honest, just looked like more Life is Strange to me.
I mean, you're not wrong, to be honest with you, but to me, it looked like the most visually and mechanically complex Life is Strange game so far. And obviously, it's trying to hit that heavy narrative. It's trying to get you in the fucking feels, as they all do. And I'm fucking here for it, man. I'm fucking here for it. I thought it looked great.
Yeah, and you called it, by the way, that it's not going to be episodic, that it's full release. So
yeah, I was right about that, and I'm very happy that I was right about that. So full release day one, and I'm really pleased. I wonder if they keep a sort of episodic structure to it anyway.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised about that. But the fact that it's coming out all at once, yes, super good from me. That 10-cent money has seen them well.
Yeah.
All right, let's shout out number 4. WB Montreal's Gotham Knights and Turtle Rock's Back for Blood, which is the spiritual successor to Left 4 Dead, have both been delayed, unfortunately. Back for Blood has been delayed from June 22nd until October the 12th. I think that we can both agree that this delay basically isn't a very big deal. The devs should definitely take their time, make the game that the fans want, because there are definitely fans that want this game. Gotham Knights, on the other hand, has been delayed until 2022, moving another major game completely out of the year. This is a less good delay for me, I would say, because I was actually expecting this game to be coming out in the first half of the year, and maybe even Q1. I know we're past Q1 now, but I mean, if it came out in Q1, that sort of wouldn't have surprised me very much. So delaying it, what in my mind must be damn nearly a year, isn't reading brilliantly to me, you know. I'm not saying that the game's in trouble or anything like that. I'm genuinely not. It's just a wee bit of a red flag, you know what I mean? It's not necessarily indicative of anything terrible, but just if it does turn out to be terrible, then this will be the thing that we're probably pointing at as the first red flag, you know. It's also interesting as well that WB and Rocksteady's Suicide Squad game is also supposed to be coming out in 2022 and is a team-based superhero servicey sort of game as well, it looks like. So I'm not really sure how they're going to handle that.
I mean, they love just ramming as much superhero stuff down our throats as they can at any one time, so there is that. But yeah, I think it's an interesting thing that you pose, because Gotham Knights did feel like it was much closer to being released in a full year or something in the region of a year's delay.
I mean, we've saw a huge amount of gameplay from Gotham Knights, right?
Yeah.
It's not just me.
We got a fair bit, at least. You know, we saw how the actual gameplay worked, and you know, there was a lot of discussion
quite like an
about
extensive gameplay stuff that went on with the game. I remember watching it. Yeah.
Either they need to retool parts of it, which that might be indicative from a delay like this, but it could just be a COVID thing. There could be, you know, WB might be putting out some other game later in the year. We can't say with any certainty. So again, if the game needs it, fair enough. You know, there's no point in rushing it out, but it will be interesting to see if it's changed substantially by the time it does come from what we have seen already.
Yeah, very interesting indeed. Alright, listen, final shout out number 5. There has been a Ghost of Tsushima movie announced, and Lewis, I can barely contain my excitement. It is being directed by the John Wick director, Chad Stahelski, I think is how we're saying that. But Lewis, the real question here is, when are we getting a God of War movie starring Dwayne The Rock Johnson?
I mean, hopefully soon, I guess.
Seriously though, what are your thoughts on this sort of new swathe of like video game movies and TV shows and just going into that traditional media?
Definitely mixed. I'm a bit more open to it than you are, I think.
I remain open to it. I remain unconvinced that any of these are going to be any good.
No, I guess that's where I'm going to land. I'm not convinced that any of them are going to be any good. I do think that particularly these Sony properties, so particularly the Last of Us movie, the Last of Us TV series that's been announced, that has the right showrunner for me, that has the right backing behind it. I can imagine that will be quite good. It's maybe not really for people like us who are big fans of the games and who have played them. You know, I think that's really about, you know, doing what The Walking Dead did. It took a graphic novel and turned it into an extremely popular media franchise. I kind of suspect the similar things at play with The Last of Us. And Ghost of Tsushima should work, right? I mean, the director, the John Wick films are really great action movies, so that fits. Ghost of Tsushima is so based on cinema. You know, it has a Kurosawa mode. Like, it is cinematic at its core. And so you can see how that should work, but video game movies often are terrible, so I'm not going to rush out and pre-order a cinema ticket at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I remain unconvinced. I'm perfectly open to these being good, but I remain unconvinced. Yes. All right, Liz, and with that, time for a beer, and then we'll be back with Topic of the Week. And we are back for Topic of the Week. Topic of the Week this week is our play-along of Oxenfree, Lewis. Oxenfree is the first game by Night School Studios. You play as a teenage girl called Alex who goes to Edwards Island, which is an ex-military base, with a group of her friends for a party of some sort, including her new stepbrother called Jonas and her dead brother's ex-girlfriend called Clarissa. Soon after arriving, Alex somewhat accidentally opens a rift to another dimension with a small radio, causing weird happenings for her and her friends and possession by, quotes, ghosts. The dead people from the SS Kanaloa are these ghosts, although they, within the game, claim that they are not ghosts and they are just sort of trapped in another dimension. It gets very weird very quickly, which was a nuclear submarine accidentally sunk by the island's only resident, Maggie Adler, who had previously worked for the army. It's basically a coming-of-age movie, the game, in a lot of ways, I think, Liz.
Yeah.
I actually quite liked it overall, Liz. What was your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that you're right to describe it as that. It's definitely a coming-of-age story done as a video game. I liked it too. I wasn't totally blown away by it. I think partly that is because I feel like we've just played a lot of fairly similar games in terms of the territory that it's covering. Not so much the gameplay mechanics necessarily, which I guess we'll come on to in a wee second. But yeah, overall, like I thought it started off as a story that I thought had a bit more promise than where it ended, although I should point out that I only played through once, and there are good and real reasons to play multiple playthroughs, which I'm sure we'll touch on as well in a second. So maybe slightly more is made of it than I saw, but for me it was a nice sort of mystery driven coming of age tale that I thought was really nicely presented. Actually, I thought the visuals, the art style and the music were really quite superb.
Lewis, my first question was going to be about the art style and the score, so please continue.
So the game in some ways reminds me of Night in the Woods in terms of what you're doing. You're just going around, you're talking to your friends, you're kind of understanding what's happening, right? But what this does, I think, more so than that, is it leans into quite a different style from a lot of other games, really. It's the kind of game that you would imagine could have easily been presented in a kind of classic 8 or 16-bit style and would have really neatly fitted in with that kind of whole indie game boom. But they've gone for something a bit subtler than that, and it's this somewhere between 2D and 3D in terms of how you move across the plane of the screen, but it has these beautiful painterly backdrops that...
I think they're hand-drawn. I think it's like all these hand-drawn backdrops. They're stunning.
Yeah.
Quite frankly. Really muted, earthy tones, which sort of like blends in with where you are and whatever. Visually, the game is absolutely fucking stunning.
Absolutely.
Frankly.
And like when you say it like that as well, like there's one scene, one area in the game, I think it's Epiphany Field, which is kind of the big central section which connects a few of the different ones. Yeah. And that is like, it's so muted, it's so earthy, it's got these kind of slightly out of focus kind of mountains and tree shapes and stuff like that. And all of that really neatly contrasts with the more supernatural stuff, which is often presented in electric green and red. It gives it a kind of nice texture, I think, as a game. Like,
totally, yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
like, I really think that visually nailed it. Absolutely nailed it.
And weirdly, it just recalled Control. It has such a kind of similarity, a massively different type of game and very different in style as well. But some of that supernatural stuff felt very close to what Control was doing. Obviously, this game came before that. So it was just really nice to see how that style and certain decisions that they'd made around how things should look and how they should sound and how different elements of the game should relate to one another have obviously, to my mind at least, gone off and inspired other things,
Yeah, nice. Yeah, definitely. I basically agree with you 100% as well. The soundtrack is just, again, in and of itself, quite muted, quite reserved, but constant and very good, and often taking the tone in the direction that it should a lot of the time. I mean, the music and matching the tone is instrumental in these sort of games, or I think it is anyway, and it's really indicative of a good soundtrack, I think, anyway. But beyond that, Lewis, I suppose starting off with the mechanics. So the actual mechanics of the games is literally just moving around these beautiful environments and dialogue options, isn't it? I mean, that is the game.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, with some other very small... I wouldn't even call them puzzle elements, but just negotiating your way around using the radio in certain different ways.
Yeah, so again, the thing about the radio is that you tune into certain frequencies and you can hear like weird things basically, and then if you tune into the right frequency in the right place, you can tear a hole in the fabric of space and time.
Yeah, exactly. You can do that. You can kind of trigger one of these possession episodes, or kind of snap out of one, I guess is what I'm trying to say there, and you can unlock gates and stuff as you go on. But yeah, it's a really simple game. It would be a really great game for anyone who doesn't play a lot of games, or quite a nice game to play with a partner or something that doesn't play, because it is just walk and talk, and there's essentially your decisions to make as the player are really just which of the 3 dialogue options to pick at any one time, or whether to pick any of them at all.
Yeah.
To me, that fell down slightly for 2 reasons. One, I just found it kind of irritating that it was easy to cut off what someone else was saying.
I'm so glad you've said that.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It was absolutely infuriating. I felt that I was always constantly caught in a trap of trying to let the person talking finish before the slowly vanishing dialogue options went away completely. and I was always trying to press them at like the last second so that I could still say my piece, basically, but not cut off the dialogue of the character talking to you, you know? It felt as if you were constantly talking over people sometimes, and it was really unpleasant to listen to sometimes, actually.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, and given that the game is all about that dialogue, and I get that they were probably going for something that felt like quite a naturalistic conversation where, you know, people do overlap with each other, you might cut someone off, whatever, but in a game, particularly one where it was also the case that you could, if you interacted with certain things, it would also cut people off, and it just felt to me at times like there was quite important story beats or just, you know, interesting dialogue or kind of that adds some flavour to it all that were being lost because of some of that. And that, we talked recently, Mark, about artificial slowness. It felt to me because of that, you know, I could read what was happening faster than it was letting me press things without then cutting someone off. And so it just felt like everything took a wee step longer than it needed to.
Yeah, I must admit, there were points where I was like hanging around in an area, basically waiting for a conversation to finish before I went to the next screen.
Exactly.
Which I knew would be a loading screen, so the conversation would have been ended, you know? So there was points like that as well. However, having said that, and that could have been done better, I would say, in general. But the story in and of itself, honestly, like, I thought it had a lot of heart, the game. I really genuinely did. As I said, it was like coming of age movie, the game. Basically, I think that, and I've subsequently looked at several other things that sort of concurred with this, a lot of the game is basically the friction between Alex, your character, and Clarissa, who is one of the first or the main person to be possessed by the ghosts, and is basically through the first half of the game until you get several flashbacks. So another thing that we've not really mentioned here is that you get stuck in time loops and things like that fairly frequently, and a lot of weird things start happening after you open this interdimensional hole. But Clarissa gets possessed, and before that she is like basically just a real fucking dick to you a lot of the time. I think that the ending that I got was basically that I didn't make up with her, because she was basically, as far as I was concerned as the player of this game as the first playthrough, she was just unprovoked being an arsehole to me. Like, do you know what I mean? And I was like, fuck you, not having this. So I was picking all the fuck you dialogue options, basically. But then you get this amazing flashback that totally changes everything, I think. And it's of Alex in the same location, like going to the beach on this island with her brother, who you find out actually drowned in front of her because she asked him to go and teach her swimming. And he unfortunately drowns, and she feels a tremendous amount of guilt about this. It transpires, as you would, obviously, as a teenager. But you get this amazing flashback of you and your brother going to the beach with Clarissa, and she's not really supposed to be there. And a lot of your dialogue options in that moment are sort of you being the dick, because the time there was, I think, supposed to be like the time for Michael, is your brother's name, and Clarissa, but you were sort of there as a bit third wheel in it. But Clarissa was, throughout the whole interaction, basically really nice to you.
Yeah.
And in that moment, you realise, oh, she has been horribly affected by this person's death as well. It is just anger. It just has this huge amount of anger about her. So I played the game more than once. So the next time that I played the game and she was being a dick to me, I found that I was reacting completely differently to the situation, because I knew, oh, you're not actually just being a dick to me for no reason whatsoever, or certainly how I felt. You're actually dealing with the same sort of pain, effectively, that Alex is dealing with.
Yeah.
And therefore, I am responding differently to that. And that's not even something I was necessarily conscious of in the moment. It was something that I sort of thought about after it, is that actually I've ended this better this time with Clarissa because I was answering questions better, because I was empathizing with her more, basically. Yeah. And I think that the dynamic really between Alex and Clarissa is the main part of the game, although the game sort of forces Jonah's story on you a little bit. Not forces it on you, that's not what I mean, but I think that the game wants the story to be a lot more about Alex and Jonah than it actually is, and I think that the game is much more actually about Alex and Clarissa, if that makes sense. But in terms of the narrative, like, it had like weird supernatural elements, which I was totally there for. It had much more horror elements than I was ever anticipating that this game would have had. Not that it's scary particularly, but it does like dabbles in a lot of that horror stuff, you know what I mean, without actually being a horror game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like it plays around with the look and the feel of a lot of horror stuff.
In fact, do you know what it feels like? It feels like a teen horror movie.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not actually all that scary, but it's sort of like dabbling, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of reinforced. That was one of the flaws to me, in a way, that there's one moment in particular where I think it's the first time you encounter Clarissa when she's possessed. It looks like she kills herself, basically.
Yeah. Which was genuinely horrifying.
That moment was, and it was quite a tough watch, but at the same time, I mean, I didn't know at that point whether characters could die or if there was anything I could do about that, and that obviously would have added some tension, but it becomes clear quickly that there isn't any real peril in the game. There's no fail state. You can't die, you can't get a game over, as far as I experienced anyway.
No, but that's the point, right? The point is you making a series of... I mean, there's no game over in... Well, actually, I think there is in Life is Strange, but in like a Telltale game, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no game over in a Telltale game. It's just your choices throughout this narrative, you know what I mean?
I just wonder how well that works in
it's
a
not
horror...
about peril necessarily for you. It's how you're responding to the in-game peril for the characters.
For sure, but it's just like some of that. So I think one of the real strengths of this game, and you've highlighted it quite a lot in what you were saying there about your relationship to Clarissa, you personally, not just the character, but it allows a certain degree of role-playing to happen. You get to come to Alex and be whoever you think she should be to her friends, right? And so you played it responding to Clarissa's hostility. I was a bit less like that. I tried to kind of just be nice to everyone because I kind of thought that's who Alex should be. But when you introduce a horror element to that, like basically like none of them felt scared enough to me, and there wasn't enough of a sense from Alex in particular that like something really bad was happening, you know?
Yeah, I think that you've hit on something quite correct here. And actually, I don't think that the voice acting in this game was very good. And I don't really think that anyone really portrayed the fact that they were scared or that they were in a dangerous situation very well at all. Like, everyone seemed to be very blasé about the fact that they were in very serious, life-threatening danger.
Exactly, yeah.
Constantly. And something incredibly bizarre was happening to them all that they were all aware of, and everyone was acting as if it was like a Sunday walk in the park.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was quite bizarre. I'm not going to name names because I'm not really about fucking putting people down like this, but I thought at least two of the voice actors were really not very good at all. I thought that the person who played Alex was great. Like, I thought that they were probably the best of them all, and which is good because they were the main character.
Yeah.
But beyond that, like, I thought that there were performances that were certainly not brilliant and not helping the vibe of like feeling scared and stuff like that, you know?
I think that's so spot on because it gave everything a sense of like, this is weird, but not that this is frightening. And that was kind of my biggest downside to the whole game, really.
I mean, they're seeing their friends being possessed, like literally lift off the ground, like levitate in front of them.
Yeah.
And then immediately after it, it's like, oh, you all right, mate?
Yeah.
What?
Exactly.
That's not an appropriate reaction to what just happened.
Yeah. All of that feeds into, like you were saying, it is very much a coming of age tale. It's very teenage. And I just feel like we've got quite a lot of that in gaming in the last 5 to 10 years. When you think about things like Life is Strange and Tell Me Why came into my head as well, and just there's a lot of games that have this very earnest...
As you said, Night in the Woods as well.
Yeah, Night in the Woods as well, yeah. Like a very earnest teenagey voice. And I can absolutely see why, because that's a really fraught time in your life and it's a confusing time, and so you can add a lot to that plot-wise and go in different directions. But my partner was in the room while I was playing a bit of this, and she turned to me and said, like, those voices are really annoying because they all just have that kind of American teenager-ness. It's really hard to put your finger on, but that was a downside to me that I think with some little tweaks here and there, it could be a really brilliant game. It just kind of, I kept comparing it to things like Kentucky Route Zero and Edith Finch that we've played recently. Quite different games, obviously, but just how they tell quite a strange and personal story. To me, those were better examples than this is, but there's definitely, and particularly if you go through the replays that you're sort of encouraged to do, there's a lot of good game here as well.
Yeah, no, there is. I mean, I want to sort of finish on a positive here. Like, although games like Night in the Woods, which will definitely be a play-along game at some point, I suspect, and Edith Finch and whatever do what this is trying to do better. This game also came before all them.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this game came quite a lot before all them. Also, it's very, very cheap as well. Like, if you've never picked this game up, you should totally do it. It's definitely worth the price of playing it. It definitely is. It's a flawed game, like 100% it is a flawed game, but I platinumed this game. Like, I completed this game 4 times. It was worth playing to me. Like, I was fairly enamored with the story. I quite liked elements of it a lot. I didn't like necessarily the fact that Alex felt as if she was talking over everyone all the time or whatever, but in terms of like the story and the different endings that you can get and the choices that you make in the game, feel as if they do actually matter as well, you know what I mean? And there's a nice twist at the end as well, which, I mean, I suppose we're going to spoil this whole game, but it basically ends with Alex not escaping the time loop, going from talking about how the game ended to talking about how she's going to go on a boat over to this island to have a party with her friends, like basically within like 1 week glitch, effectively. And that way it definitely does encourage you to play it again and again and again, and to see how you play it differently. And I found that I was genuinely playing it differently. Like, I definitely enjoyed it. It was definitely worth playing. It was definitely worth my time. It was definitely worth the money. So I would still 100% recommend it. Is it one of my favourite indie games I've ever played in my life? No, it's not. But it definitely was worth the time. All right, Lewis, I think we'll have to call it a day there. I'd like to remind everyone that you can find PlayersToo on all the social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com. That's PlayerStoo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, it really, really helps us out. I know I say this twice a week, every week, but it does not become less important on a weekly basis. Thank you so much to anyone that's already done that for us. It genuinely does mean a lot, and it only takes you 5 seconds. So if you could do that for us, it would really, really, really help us out. All right, Liz, time to announce our new play-along game for the month coming, and that is FTL Faster Than Light. This by Subset Games, the makers of Into the Breach, which me and Lewis both absolutely loved, and was actually our first ever play-along game, Lewis. So here we go, we've come full circle. It's only taken us, a year and a bit to actually decide to play this one.
Pretty much, yeah. But it's about time. I've been really looking forward to this, so yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It's been on the list for a long time. You can get the game on iOS and you can get it on PC, and I think you can get it on Mac as well, which is helpful for this guy, but basically nobody else. It's usually pretty cheap on Steam as well, to be honest. Like, it's not a very expensive game, but it has supposed to be absolutely brilliant. It is a roguelike, which has given me some trepidation about playing it because I've basically never played a roguelike that I really, really loved, but I'm hoping that this will be the first, so here we go.
Good stuff.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week.
Thanks.